All right, guys, as promised, I just want to go through all of the scents that I've been using and the backstory behind the Daywalk brand that I created, and to just talk about which ones I use, when I use them, that type of stuff. But first, I wanted to say thanks to all of you guys for the early orders. I know a bunch of you guys ordered within the last week or so, so I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I know a lot of you guys are just getting them in the field, already getting some really cool feedback, which I love to hear. So keep it coming. Again, I appreciate the support. I'm going to go through first how I use these scents on a mock scrape. So I've got a spot picked out here, overhanging branch, pretty good height, a little high, but I want even more of a vertical aspect on the licking branch. And when it comes to licking branches, I mean, please do your own trials and errors and see what you prefer. For me, I've used everything from the ropes to the vines to different styles of branches. I find myself continuing to come back to a good old-fashioned oak branch. I think it's, for me anyways, on the properties I run scrapes, it seems to be the most effective, and you know, for that reason I try to use it as much as possible. So that's my preference. The wiry the better. Something about it just seems like they like that kind of rigidness when they're rubbing their face up on it. So that's what I prefer. So I cut this oak branch from a neighboring tree, gonna hang it straight down on this. I always try to keep some heavier duty zip ties for this. I try to trim kind of a little V so that it hangs a little bit better. So I'm just going to attach this real quick, and I try to, you can see how this branch has a pretty good curve to it. I want that curve kind of going out, not towards the trunk of the tree, but out away from the tree if possible. So I'm going to flip it around here and attach it that way. And I add a second zip tie just to help it stay on there. Obviously, you know, when we get into it, these bucks are going to be pretty aggressive when they're working these, so I want that to stay on and not have that scrape go dry on me. Okay, so that's perfect. A lot of times I will trim, I always keep a pair of pruners. I'll trim some of these leaves just so when I set up a camera, I'm not going to get a bunch of blank pictures, and the leaves are going to come off anyways, but I'd rather just have them off for the most part to start with. But I love this height right here. You know, it's about belly button height on me right now. You know, think about too, as these leaves start to fall off, how much that branch is going to raise up. You don't want to start it up here around chest height, when the leaves are kind of, or the leaves are weighing down the branches and those leaves fall off, it raises up, and then that licking branch is too high. So early in the year, I like to think waist to belly button, because I know it's going to raise up a little bit later on the year, or if it's a tree like a conifer or something, it's not going to really lose weight. You can keep it up a little bit higher, but just think about that height. I like having multiple. I don't always like just having one. I've seen good response when I have multiple little branches for them to leave their scent on. This right here is about ideal for me. This is going to be a magnet. As far as the scrape, the location's right, multiple trails crossing right here, but it sticks out away from the tree. This will be a killer setup. Moving on to the scents themselves, obviously I created this Daywalk brand, and the reason behind it is, if you followed me over the years, you know that I'm a big fan of mock scrapes. I love them for cameras, for inventory, even for hunting. I love watching deer behavior at scrapes. I can't tell you how much I've learned about individual bucks just by watching how they act and interact with other deer at scrapes. And so I think they're such a valuable tool, and they're just a lot of fun. And so I've always been playing with different scents, but because, I do literally hundreds of mock scrapes on various properties every year, I thought, this would be a category that would make sense for me to really dive into and have more of a hand in the product line. And so I started testing these scents prior to the 2023 season, and for myself on all the properties that I hunt and manage, and also sent them across the country to various buddies in other states and other deer herds, and the results were phenomenal, pretty much across the board. So These are the 5 that I've kind of settled on. A few things about the lineup itself. All 5 of these are 100% synthetic, so they are all organic compounds. And one thing that kind of separates it maybe from others is there are no preservatives used. While it is a synthetic, there is a shelf life. You know, I tell guys, just buy enough for a 1-season use basically, and then buy fresh stuff the following year. So it's still going to last longer than, you know, the real stuff from a deer, but it's not going to last as long as some of the stuff that has the preservatives in it. But I do think it makes a difference when it comes to performance, you know, not having those in there. Another reason that I chose to do all synthetics is just from a legality standpoint. There are certain states that have outlawed the use of real scents, and you know, I know a lot of guys, including myself, that hunt different states, and just to really simplify that and not have to worry about different states' laws. And the third and final reason as to why synthetic is, you know, when I first started testing these, I tested the real version versus the synthetic version side by side in multiple locations, and saw absolutely zero difference in deer behavior or deer reaction. So I know the synthetics straight up work. That's kind of the background as to why that. Like I said, all organic, no preservatives, and there's kind of a use for each one. I'll go through that now. I'm going to start with kind of the staple, which is the pre-orbital gland lure. So the pre-orbital, like I said, one of my favorites. I think it's a staple in any census. I've been using pre-orbital gland lure for years and years. I love this stuff. I use it on every scrape, whether it's a mock scrape, an existing scrape, doesn't matter. It's super, super effective when applied to a licking branch like this setup right here. It comes in a little glass dropper, and I usually put 2 or 3 drops, kind of spread it out on the different licking branches, and that's really all it takes. Obviously designed to mimic the secretions from a buck's face and forehead, and again, just super attractive to bucks, especially as they start to work scrapes in September and on. But again, you can use this any time of year, and I would definitely recommend at least using this as part of the entire scent system. The other one that I use pretty much all year round in my lineup is the Calm and Curious. So this is, you can think of it more or less of your herd scent, your just your general non-estrus, rutting buck. It's a very calming herd scent that can be used all year round. So up until like, you know, probably the 3rd week of October, this is the one that I'm using in all my scrapes. You know, early in the season, prior to the season, during the off season, this is what I'm using in tandem with the pre-orbital, and this is just a little 2-ounce spray bottle. Essentially, what I'll do is I'll use this and spray it, you know, maybe 3 sprays on the ground at the base of the scrape, and it creates a good lure to help attract deer, but it's very calming. You know, it's definitely seems to create, just watching the deer behavior, seems to create a curiosity factor, but it's, you know, it's not like a spooked, it's just like, you know, coming to investigate type of reaction. So there's a lot of different uses for this one. Like I said, this is how I use it in a scrape. It can also be used in the stand. You know, you can use it as a little bit of a cover scent, spray it around the base of your tree. You can spray it on the back side of your tree, the downwind side of your tree when you're up in the stand. So a lot of different uses for this, and I'll talk about a couple more here in a second. The 2 other sprays that I have in the lineup are the Hot Doe Peak Estrus and the Intruder Dominant Buck. And these are typically ones I'm going to wait a little bit later. So like the Peak Estrus, the Hot Doe, I'm going to wait and start introducing that right around the 3rd week of October here in Iowa. The Intruder Dominant Buck, I'll sometimes push a little bit earlier depending on the situation. So if there's a, you know, if I have a mature buck that I'm trying to kind of push the limits early in October, and you know, try to create a little more aggressiveness, a little more daylight behavior, that's a good use for the Intruder Dominant Buck. Try to sneak in, hit a couple scrapes with this, and try to incite some aggressiveness, you know, creating that scenario where another buck is kind of intruding in. And it's all about, to me, I think it's all about timing with that one. You try to time it with when these bucks are starting to naturally increase their aggressiveness. Bucks are starting to try to figure out, you know, who's the dominant buck in each area. And so that's a good way to kind of try to incite that that aggressiveness, that increased you know, movement and behavior from a mature buck. So that's a good one. It's a you know, musky, potent, you know, just your dominant buck smell, your tarsal gland, your interdigital gland, your buck urine. And then you have your hot doe, the peak estrus scent. So this is a little bit more niche use. Obviously, timing is very important with this one, but I think it's the one we're most familiar with as far as using scents. This is designed to mimic multiple scents from a doe that's in that peak estrus cycle. So utilize in scrapes like I've done before, a couple sprays on the ground, use them in with drag rags, scent wicks, on a doe decoy in the field. A lot of different uses for this one. And again, it's all about the timing. So late October all the way through November here in Iowa. It's pretty cool to see the reaction if you time it right. The reaction from a bunch of different bucks, you know, thinking there's a hot doe in the area. And finally, the last one in the lineup, at least for this year, is the rut nuggets. And these are really cool, kind of unique, but I've seen some pretty incredible results when used in scrapes. And again, you can get creative with the use of this, but essentially it's a container full of a bunch of jagged, kind of flat cut polymers that are really, really good at absorbing scent. So in the rut nuggets, there is a combination of doe estrus and a bunch of different buck scents, your interdigital, your tarsal, your pre-orbital. It's kind of an entire scrape system blended into one. But typically what I'll do is I'll take a little stick and just knock out 8 or 10 of these little polymers into the bottom of the scrape. And by putting them in the scrape right there, they're also, like I said, they're really good at absorbing scents. So not only are the scents that they've been absorbing in the container going to have a slow release over the period of a couple weeks, you're also going to absorb every deer that comes and urinates in that scent or leaves their scent there, again, because those polymers are so good at soaking that up. So it kind of not only ignites it, but it keeps that scrape hot, and it just creates this hub of activity. So again, I've seen some really good results with this. This is, in my mind, another one of the staples of anybody that runs a lot of mock scrapes. These are pretty cool, potent for sure, but they seem to work really well. So that's kind of the rundown on all the scents. I mentioned how I've used them in a scrape. One other kind of fun use that I think you guys will get a kick out of, but so, you know, obviously I self-film a lot, and one of the hardest things about self-filming is getting a buck to stop where you need it to, or any deer for that matter, to stop, you know, for you to let go of the camera, grab the bow, draw back and shoot. That's a lot of movement to get away with when you can't really bleed at a deer and have them look at you and then get away with all that movement. So I've always thought about creative ways to get a deer to stop, you know, somewhere where I need him to naturally, as opposed to, you know, me having to make a sound. And so with these scents, I also bought a bunch of, they're basically marble size wooden beads with a hole in the middle, and I take a piece of cotton ball and stuff it in, and I make a bunch, pre-make a bunch of these and put them in a little bag that goes inside my pack. And so when I get in the stand, if I'm in an area where I want a deer to stop and I don't maybe have a scrape or something out in front, rather than going out in the field and leaving all my ground scent to apply some scent to that spot, I've been taking those little wooden beads, I take one out and I spray a little bit of scent on that cotton ball that's inside the bead, and I carry a slingshot in my pack, and I sling that little wooden bead that now has the scent on it out into the field, you know, 20, 25 yards where I want a deer to stop. And it's been cool to see the reaction and see it work multiple times where a deer just comes in, you know, maybe it's on a trail, comes in, stops for a few seconds, sniffs it, and keeps on going. Like it's not a spooked reaction. Again, it's just enough to get them to stop, give me plenty of time to shoot. And so that's kind of where the idea came from, was just trying to find a solution to that. But again, you can get creative with the uses of these things. When I do that, I just squirt a tiny little bit on that cotton ball, maybe one, maybe two pumps, and I don't want that scent sitting out there in that field for a long time. More or less just the time of my hunt, or maybe a day. But it's been pretty cool to watch that work as well. It's a way of getting that scent out there, again, without physically going out in the middle of a field or a trail or whatever it is. So I don't know all the regulations, all the states. Make sure that that's legal in your area. I've talked to the DNR officer here, and no issues with that at all, at least here in Iowa. So again, be creative with these, and I'm already seeing some cool pictures and videos from you guys that have started using them. Feel free to continue to share those with me. It's cool to see that. Like I said, I've used this on hundreds and hundreds of scrapes, and it's cool to see the results. So I appreciate the support again. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. The website is www.daywalkdeer.com, and good luck out there this year.